Hi everybody, welcome to our lecture for Chapter 9, which is Authentic Leadership. This is another one of those chapters that I would consider to be a fairly simple one. Reading the book is going to help you get a good understanding, but I also feel like a lot of this chapter is self-explanatory. It's a reason why I'm using this exclusively as an online lecture and an online course. I think this is the easiest chapter in the book. It's common sense. It can be applied to the principalship. You'll understand it, and it relates to education. If you use this leadership style for your final paper, you are not going to find much on it. So is it a good theory? Yes. Is it a theory that could help you? Absolutely. But there is very limited research on this chapter. And because of that, I want you to just be on edge if you're going to use this as the one that you're going to do for your final paper, because you're going to need good research, and there's not much because it's so self-explanatory. But it's important because I'd argue it's true. It's basically saying that leadership is reciprocal. Everything that a leader does to their follower impacts them, and what followers do to leaders impact them. It's nurtured, it's developed over a lifetime, and major events in life trigger someone to become a leader. So this is this notion of the defining moment in leadership. And I will be honest with you, I've taught this class now for a number of times, both here and at Point Park, and I've done this. So one of the things, I've been doing this work with succession planning for a while now, and one of the things that I've tried to do with the succession planning work is find ways to make this authentic leadership part of that study. So I've been asking all the principals that I interview if they have a career-defining moment where they knew they needed to be a principal, and they knew it was their calling in life, and they knew what they wanted. I found that some of them can answer this clearly, and others gave me more surface-based answers saying, I need more money for my family, it was a natural transition, I was the head guidance counselor, and I was already doing half the principal's job anyway, but I'd say about 40 to 50% actually had this defining moment. So it's something that I'm considering doing research on, but there's not much that I have that really justifies this yet. Could there be in the future? Possibly, but I haven't found it yet. So think about professional football. Professional sports, this happens all the time, where something happens and somebody has to be a natural leader. The last 2 years has been a very, very, very difficult position for the NFL. There's been a lot of changes, a lot of challenges, and there have been people that have been put in leadership roles that maybe didn't want to be, and there's been a lot of scandals. I'm from Pittsburgh. It's, you know, we're in 2015 when I'm filming this, but I will tell you this. I'm looking at this from a distance, and there are still protesters outside protesting Michael Vick. I am not a Michael Vick fan. I'm an animal activist, and animal rights is something that's very big in my life. But I don't, for me, so I would, if I was back home, I'd probably be out protesting with everybody. But there's been scandals and problems, and we're talking about something that happened 6 or 7 years ago, and it's all over the news in Pittsburgh. There's been other issues, a lot of issues with physical abuse, rape, neglect, abusing a child, and I think that, you know, it's been difficult. The true leaders have emerged, but in some cases people have had to step up and take the place of others. So professional sports, you can look at authentic leadership from that, when people were just kind of placed into the leadership role, whether they want to be or not, and then they take it. So what makes authentic leadership happen? 4 different components. We're going to talk about each one of them. Self-awareness, more than anything else. The person knows that they want to be a leader, and they know that they can give something to that specific leadership role. They have a moral perspective, that they know that they're doing the right thing, and they know that by being a leader they can benefit and influence others. That's something that's been missing from my initial research. I'm only a few counties in, so I don't know if that's going to be a complete finding, but that's been interesting to me. I haven't seen much of that. The concept of balanced processing, where they know that it might take time for them to arrive at that leadership role, and what that's going to look like when they get there, and also the idea of relational transparency. Everything that they do is easily seen by others, and at least they're open that they want that leadership role. These are people that want it, and that they strive for it. So we need better leaders in our society that can advance their followers. Authentic leadership tends to come when people are in a position where they're forced with a leader who's not doing a good job, or the leader leaves at the last minute, and somebody comes up from the pipeline and comes up from the shadows and becomes that authentic leader, and that's when it tends to emerge. So relating to the components again, try to think about the people that know their strengths and weaknesses. You have to know as a principal what you can and can't do. And I have seen this go wrong and go south for a number of principals that I've worked for or that I've helped in their positions. Some that have very little knowledge of curriculum development, put in roles that they have to do curriculum. People that are more introverted, put in roles where they have to do community relationships. You need to know what you can and can't do and understand it. So I buy this, and I see this as a potential avenue for leadership. With the moral perspective, they know what they need to do, and they rely on their morals to guide them and to guide others. Pretty self-explanatory, but it's difficult in the principalship. When you do balanced processing, you know what the pluses of your actions are and the minuses of your actions, but you also know that you have to make decisions that have the best interest of stakeholders at heart. It's difficult in the principalship to be objective, and you have to consider this as you move forward in the position. So you have to present who you are. You have to show positives and negatives to your followers and others. It's easier said than done in the principalship, because what we're going to teach you is you have a lot of different people, a lot of different stakeholders, and you're going to have to be smiling and happy at all times. But then, you're put in positions where if you're open about how you're feeling and you show it, it's going to be better for you as a leader, especially if there was somebody who was a superhero leader before, who was in and out. They came in, they did their 2 or 3 years and left a lot of things on the table. You have to be open and honest. So I buy this, especially when there's high turnover in a position. So this comes from psychology and education. So I think it's interesting to us because everything else that I've talked about has really come out of philosophy and business. I lean to the business theories. It's just my nature. But I think it's interesting that most of this stuff has come out of philosophy and business, and now we're looking at something that comes out of psychology. So the first factor of this is confidence. In education, I think this relates kind of to this narcissistic mindset that we all have. Most of us think we can do anything. But if you understand that you're taking on tasks that you can complete, you get more confidence if you know, I can do this and I can finish this. That's one of the most important things that you can do in education. If you have a positive motivational attitude and you have goals and you're confident, that's something else that's going to help you. And you have hope. You know that whatever you believe in is going to change, and you have confidence and hope. They work together. Optimistic, you look at these situations as positives. Most people that are thrown into leadership roles under the idea of authentic leadership, there are problems because they're ones that don't have favorable expectations about the future. They're positive about their capabilities, but they don't know whether or not those capabilities are going to be addressed, or that they can do it, but at least they're optimistic and believe that they can. The notion of resilience, this is something that's being looked a lot at in school principals right now. If you're interested in teacher grit, student grit, or principal grit, one of the factors that you're going to look at is resilience. A lot of adverse situations happen in education, and the principal's the person in the middle. And good leaders can adapt to these hardships and stay the course when things get difficult. Many studies on this centered around the idea of just being yourself and doing what you think is right and doing what's best. It's an interesting approach because of that. It empowers and engages people in their work roles, but like I said, a lot of it is dealing with just being yourself and being who you are. That's why this is kind of the no-brainer of leadership. You're gonna be looking at the ethics chapter in this course, and when you look at it, it shows you the reasons why we need trustworthy leadership in society. The ethics chapter will be one that I do slightly later on, but we know that ethics is important to school principals. It's very basic and very broad. It's something that everybody can understand what this means. That's why it's tough to write a paper on this or understand theory related to this. If you believe in morals in education, this is a good one. There's one, There's been one mode that has used this to measure, and it's called the ALQ, and it is available in your textbook. So you may want to take a look at it, and it might be an approach that you consider. So it's new, and it's difficult to quantify morality. What I say that I'm moral about might be different than I actually practice. There is no set moral standard in the United States. We each have our own ethical thresholds on what we're going to do and what we can do. There's no linkage to positive organizational outcomes with this approach as well. So is this an approach that you want to look at? I don't know. There's very little research on it. That's good and that's bad. I'm taking an initiative on this because I know that there's little research on it, so I try to build it into my succession planning stuff. And I'll be honest, I'm about halfway through my interviews, and it's been a failure so far. This is not a domain that I'm going to use in succession planning, unless something changes with the next few counties that I look at. So I'm trying for research on it. There's little on it, so whether you like it, you might want to consider it. If you find a leader similar to you in your position and they have longevity, that may be a good way to look at this model. So the next chapter that's in our textbook that we're going to look at is this notion of servant leadership. That's chapter 10. Depending on when class meets, I've switched the order around a little bit, but our servant leadership chapter is chapter 10. And that's a big focus in Oklahoma. It as a whole is a land-grant state, and Oklahoma State is a land-grant university. So that's it. If you need anything, please let me know. This is another quickie, but I think it's one that's kind of interesting and kind of self-explanatory. Thank you.